She was 9 years old, dying, and had one final wish. Not for fame or fortune, but a hug from Elon Musk. When her video reached his desk, everything else stopped. What followed wasn't a press event or a headline. It was a moment that rewrote his mission. But what did her final letter say that changed everything? Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Tesla headquarters buzzed with its usual rhythm. Keyboards clicking, muted voices in strategy meetings, screens glowing with graphs and projections. Elon Musk sat behind his desk, eyes locked on a design schematic for a next-gen propulsion system. He didn't look up when Clara, his assistant, entered the room. "Unless it's about Mars, it can wait," he muttered. Clara didn't move. Her voice was softer this time. "It's not about Mars. It's about someone who thinks you're her hero." That caught his attention. He looked up, brow furrowed. Clara gently set the tablet on his desk and tapped play. The screen lit up. A girl, no older than 9, lay in a hospital bed. Her head was wrapped in a pink scarf. Her voice, weak but unshakable, filled the room. "Hi, Mr. Musk. My name is Lily. I'm 9 years old. My dream is to go to Mars, but the doctors say I won't live long enough to see it. That's okay. I just have one wish. I want to meet you, even if it's just for one hug." Elon stared at the frozen frame of her smile, something in him going quiet. "Is this real?" he asked. Clara nodded. "Her mom sent it through a foundation. She doesn't have much time." He stood. "How soon can we make this happen?" Hours later, he boarded his jet. Not for Mars. For Lily. The jet hummed steadily as it cut through the night sky, but Elon Musk's thoughts were far from steady. He paced the cabin restlessly, arms crossed, eyes unfocused. Clara sat quietly across from him, the soft glow of her tablet the only light in the room. Elon finally stopped near the window, gazing into the dark. "What if I disappoint her?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if I'm not what she imagined?" Clara looked up. "She doesn't want the Elon Musk," she said gently. "She wants you." He turned slowly, eyebrows knitting together. "But I've built rockets, companies, ideas. That's what people see. That's who I am." Clara shook her head. "To the world, maybe, but not to her. Lily didn't ask for a speech or a tour of SpaceX. She asked for a hug. She asked for you." Elon sat down, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. "I'm not used to this." "No one is," Clara replied, "but sometimes just showing up might be the most heroic thing you've ever done." He said nothing in return, but his silence held weight. He wasn't flying to be a genius. He was flying to be a man who kept his promise. Elon sat quietly as the jet cruised through the clouds, his thoughts drifting far beyond the stars. He wasn't thinking about launch schedules or quarterly earnings. He was thinking about a little girl with a scarf around her head and stars in her heart. And for the first time in a long time, he was asking himself a different kind of question. All his life, people had called him a hero, visionary, genius, savior of humanity, but he had never really believed it, not deep down. Every award, every headline, every roaring applause, it had always felt distant, like it was meant for someone else, someone larger than life, someone he had to keep pretending to be. He remembered late nights alone in glass towers, the quiet after a rocket launch, the empty echo in hotel rooms between meetings. People saw the victories, but they never saw the silence that followed, the cost, the loneliness. His mother used to say it when he was young, "Money can't buy happiness, Elon." He had brushed it off then, convinced she just didn't understand ambition. But now, her words echoed louder than ever. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had signed billion-dollar deals, written out visions for Mars and shaped the future, and yet, somehow, they had never reached into the simplest, deepest parts of life. What had all this building led to, really? A little girl had sent him a video, not for what he could do, but for who he was, or who she believed he might be. That shook something loose in him. He placed a hand on his chest, over his heart, and whispered into the cabin's silence, "For all I've built, I've never built peace in here." The hospital room was quiet except for the gentle rhythm of machines and the distant murmur of nurses in the hallway. Elon hesitated at the doorway, his hand resting on the frame. It was strange. He had walked into rooms filled with world leaders, scientists, and heads of state without flinching. But this was different. Inside, Lily's room looked more like a mini planetarium than a hospital. Stars and planets hung from the ceiling on string. The walls were covered in hand-drawn rockets, Mars landscapes, and what could only be described as a lovingly imperfect sketch of the SpaceX logo. Her bed was surrounded by pillows, each embroidered with tiny constellations. And in the center of it all, propped up gently, was Lily. She looked smaller than he had imagined. Her pink scarf was bright against her pale skin, and her arms were thin beneath the blanket. But when she saw him, her face lit up, not with shock or tears, but with pure joy. "Mr. Musk," she whispered, eyes wide. "You came." Elon stepped in, suddenly aware of how loud his footsteps felt. He knelt beside her bed, offering a small smile. "You must be Commander Lily," he said softly. "I heard you've been training for zero gravity." She nodded, lifting her arms and pretending to float. "I've been practicing. You think I'd make a good astronaut?" "The best," Elon replied, his voice catching. "But astronauts have to be brave, and I think you're braver than most people I've ever met." Lily's giggle was soft, but it filled the room like sunlight. "Pinky promise?" she asked, holding out her hand, her tiny pinky extended. Elon hesitated. Then, gently, he reached out and linked his pinky with hers. "Pinky promise." They spent the next hour talking about rockets, Mars colonies, and how she wanted to plant a flag with glitter on it because Mars needs some sparkle. Elon found himself laughing, really laughing, not the polite chuckle he gave on camera, but something real and unguarded. She showed him her notebook, her mission log, filled with drawings, notes, and even a list of astronaut meal ideas that included ice cream sandwiches for space. "You've thought of everything," he said, flipping through the pages. "I think you'd be an amazing mission commander." Lily's eyes sparkled. Do you think I could really go to Mars?" Elon looked at her for a long moment. "You already have," he said quietly. She tilted her head, confused. "You dreamed it, you believed in it. That's how every mission starts." Lily's mother appeared in the doorway, her eyes glassy with tears, but her smile calm. She held out a small envelope. "She wrote something for you," she said. Elon took it with both hands, feeling its weight. The envelope was thin, light, but somehow it felt heavier than anything he'd ever carried. Lily looked up at him again, serious now. "Mr. Musk," she whispered, "will you take me with you?" The words hit like a meteor. Elon's breath caught. She wasn't asking for a trip. She wasn't asking for fame or glory. She was asking to matter, to be remembered, to be part of something bigger. He looked down at the envelope, then back at her. "I will," he said softly. "I promise." And in that moment, the world's most famous innovator wasn't a billionaire or an engineer or a public figure. He was just a man being seen, being trusted. And he knew he could never go back to being anything less. The next morning, Elon returned to the hospital, walking the same quiet hallways, past the same flickering fluorescent lights. But something was different. The energy that had radiated from Lily's room the day before felt dimmer now, more fragile. He paused outside her door, heart tight in his chest, then knocked softly and stepped inside. Lily was propped up against her pillows, smaller than he remembered, her scarf slightly askew. Her cheeks were pale and her breathing was slower, more labored. But when she saw him, her face lit up. "Hi, Mr. Musk," she whispered, her voice thinner than yesterday but still laced with excitement. "I didn't think you'd come back so soon." Elon smiled gently, moving to the chair beside her bed. "Of course I came back. I couldn't stay away from the best astronaut in training." She chuckled weakly. "I'm not sure I'd pass the health check." Elon's smile faltered, but he nodded. Even the best commanders need rest. They sat quietly for a moment, the hum of machines filling the silence. Then Lily turned her head slightly toward him, her eyes sharp with curiosity despite her weariness. "Mr. Musk," she asked, "why do you really want to go to Mars?" Elon blinked, taken aback by the question. Of all the interviews he'd done, all the panels and conferences, no one had ever asked it quite like that. He took a breath. "Because Mars is a second chance," he said softly. "It's hope. A way to make sure humanity survives, even if we mess up this world. It's a new beginning. For all of us." Lily nodded slowly. "A second chance," she repeated. "That sounds nice." She looked down at the blanket covering her lap. Her small fingers fidgeted with the edge of the fabric. Do you think people like me get second chances too?" Elon's throat tightened. "Lily," he said gently, "I think people like you are the reason second chances matter." She turned her face toward him again, and this time her voice was barely above a whisper. "Then take me." Elon leaned forward, his brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when you go to Mars," she said, her breath trembling. "Take me with you. Even if I'm not here anymore, take a piece of me." He didn't respond right away. The request was simple, yet it struck something deep inside him. This wasn't a fantasy or a dream. It was her final wish. A way for her to go somewhere she never could in life. "I promise," he said, placing his hand gently over hers. "You'll go with us. I'll make sure of it." A faint smile curled at the corner of her lips. "Really?" "Really," Elon replied. "You'll be part of the journey, always." Lily turned toward the small table beside her bed. Her fingers reached for something. A folded piece of paper, carefully creased into the shape of a star. She held it out to him with trembling hands. "Then take this," she said. "It's my star. I made it for you." Elon accepted it like a sacred relic, the fragile paper cradled in his palms. It was uneven, slightly wrinkled, its corners imperfect. But to him, it felt like the most valuable thing he'd ever held. "I'll keep it safe," he whispered, "and I'll take it to Mars." Lily's eyes fluttered shut for a moment, then opened again slowly. "Promise?" He looked straight into her eyes. "Pinky promise?" She gave him a tired smile, her small body sinking deeper into the pillows. "Good," she murmured. "Then I don't have to worry anymore." For a while they sat in silence, the folded star between them. Elon didn't speak. He didn't need to. Something had shifted in him, not in his public image or his goals or his mission, but in his heart. For the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking about building something for the world. He was thinking about honoring a little girl who believed in him more than he had ever believed in himself. And as he left her room, the paper star still pressed against his heart, he knew that promise would shape the rest of his life. The morning was quieter than usual when Elon arrived at the hospital. The halls that once buzzed faintly with activity now felt hushed, subdued, like even the building understood the weight of the day. A nurse nodded solemnly as she led him to Lily's room. He noticed the slight tremble in her hands as she opened the door. Inside, the atmosphere was fragile, like the soft breath of a candle about to flicker out. Lily lay tucked beneath her rocket-printed blanket, her pink scarf in place, but looser now. Her cheeks were pale and her frame had shrunk into the pillows that propped her up. Still, when she saw Elon, her face lit up like it had every time. "Hi, Mr. Musk," she whispered, her voice a breath carried on air. Elon took the seat next to her, reaching out to gently hold her hand. "Hi, Commander Lily," he said, his voice warm but quivering. "I brought your mission log with me. Clara tried to steal it, but I won." Lily smiled faintly. "I'm glad. Every mission needs a good log." They shared a quiet chuckle, the kind that floats softly between two people who understand the moment is more precious than words can carry. After a long pause, Lily's smile faded. Her hand, still resting in his, gripped just a little tighter. "Mr. Musk," she said softly, "I don't think I'll be here much longer." The sentence landed like a weight inside Elon's chest. He swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. "Lily?" he began, but the words caught. Her gaze didn't waver. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not scared. I just wanted to say goodbye." He shook his head slowly. "You'll never be gone. You'll be with us every step of the way." "I meant it." Lily's eyes sparkled. "You promise?" "I promise," he said, his voice cracking. "Every rocket, every star. You'll be right there." A moment of silence passed, broken only by the hum of the monitors beside her. Lily turned her head slightly toward the window, where the early sunlight peeked through the blinds. "I'll watch from the stars," she said, softly. Those words undid him. Elon leaned forward, pressing his forehead gently to the edge of her blanket. The man who had designed systems to colonize another planet, who had faced global scrutiny and sleepless years of problem-solving, finally let the walls fall. Silent tears ran down his face, not for failure, but for love, for something he couldn't fix, for someone he couldn't keep. Lily looked at him, her small smile still holding. She didn't need him to solve anything. She just needed him to be there. After a long pause, she reached toward her bedside table. Her fingers, delicate and shaking, picked up the folded paper star. "This is yours now," she whispered. "So I can go with you." Elon took the star, both hands cupped beneath it like it was made of glass. It was fragile, imperfect, and more meaningful than any invention he had ever created. "Thank you, Lily," he said quietly. "I'll take you farther than any star has ever gone." She gave a tiny nod, her eyes fluttering closed. Her breathing slowed. He stayed there, holding her hand as she drifted into sleep. He didn't move. He didn't check his watch. He didn't think about headlines or launches or meetings. For the first time, Elon Musk wasn't the world's richest man, or a tech visionary, or the architect of humanity's future. He was just a man holding the hand of a little girl who had changed everything. As he stood to leave, he slipped the folded star into his pocket. Her legacy now in his hands. The halls of SpaceX felt different when Elon returned. The familiar clatter of keyboards, the muffled conversations, the rhythm of machinery, it all carried on as usual. But Elon walked with quieter steps, carrying something fragile in his pocket that weighed more than any blueprint or prototype he had ever held. He entered the design lab where engineers were working on the next generation of the Mars-bound rocket. Without fanfare, without a prepared speech, he stepped forward and held out the folded paper star. "This," he said simply, "has to go to Mars." At first, there was silence, a few confused glances exchanged between team members. Then someone stepped forward and took the star gently from Elon's hand. "We'll make it part of the payload," they said quietly. "We'll find a way." It was sealed into a small, protected compartment, one normally reserved for historic mementos, flags, or cultural symbols. But this, Elon said, was more than a symbol. It was a sacred promise, a sacred mission. At the next press conference, standing before the world's media, Elon's voice was steady but subdued. No slideshows, no technological breakthroughs to boast about. Just one story. A little girl named Lily dreamed of going to Mars, he began. But she couldn't make the journey herself. She had cancer. She was 9 years old, and her last wish was to meet me. Cameras clicked, reporters leaned forward. She didn't want headlines or gifts, Elon continued. She just wanted to be seen, to be hugged. And in that room, beside her bed, I realized I'd spent my life building the future without really being present in the now. He paused, then reached into his coat pocket and held up the star. Jean gave me this and asked if I'd take her to Mars. A hush fell over the room. He's gone now, he said softly. But her dream lives on. Her courage, her imagination, her kindness. That's what this mission is about. She couldn't go, but her dream will. No applause followed. Not at first, just stillness, the kind of reverent silence that only real truth can create. Then, slowly, people stood. Reporters, engineers, guests. Applause began, gentle at first, then rising, not in celebration of a man, but in honor of a little girl who had become something more than a dreamer. She had become a guidepost, a mirror. In the days that followed, Lily's story spread across the globe. Schools created star projects in her honor. Letters poured into SpaceX from children inspired by her courage, and within the walls of the lab, her star, carefully protected, was secured into the heart of the Mars-bound vessel, not as a symbol of loss, but as a promise, a beacon of who we could be when we choose love over legacy, presence over performance, humanity over history. And so, the girl who couldn't travel the stars became a part of the mission to touch them. Her folded paper star would ride farther than any human hand had ever reached, reminding the world what dreams are truly for. The day of the Mars launch dawned clear and still, the kind of sky that felt like it had been waiting for something sacred. Elon stood behind the reinforced glass of the SpaceX control room, surrounded by engineers and mission specialists. But in his heart, it wasn't about the data or the countdown. It was about a folded paper star, sealed inside a tiny capsule aboard the rocket. The engines roared to life, shaking the earth beneath them. The rocket lifted gracefully, cutting through the morning sky like a promise rising. Elon didn't cheer. He didn't speak. He simply watched. Hands clasped in front of him, eyes fixed on the trail of light, until it disappeared from view. This wasn't just another mission. It was the most personal one of his life. Weeks later, the first images returned from Mars. Among the rugged red terrain inside the newly constructed habitat sat a small memorial. Encased in glass, safe from the Martian dust, was Lily's star. Below it, a metal plaque shimmered under the artificial light. It read, "For Lily, who dreamed of the stars and became one." Elon stared at the image in silence, tears stinging his eyes. All his life, he had launched rockets, but this time, it felt like he had launched a soul. And somehow, it was the first time it truly mattered. Today, Elon Musk still launches rockets, but he also visits elementary schools, holding up a simple notebook labeled Lily's Mission Log. He tells her story not to inspire space travel, but to remind students that big dreams don't require wealth or fame, just heart. That folded paper star remains framed in his office, a quiet anchor in a world that moves too fast. Executives ask him why it's there. He simply answers, "It reminds me why we do this." Lily didn't build a company. She didn't write code or engineer systems. But her courage changed the course of history and the heart of one of its most ambitious dreamers. Through her, Elon found something no launch could ever offer: the weight of meaning. Sometimes the greatest legacy is not what we build, but who we carry with us. If Lily's inspiring story touched your heart, share this video. Let her voice ripple beyond the stars. Someone out there may be quietly waiting to know their dream matters too. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, stories of courage, kindness, and hope, subscribe now, because sometimes the most inspiring story is still being written.